Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry.
I think it's going to be a small group because unfortunately the Zoom link was supposed to be sent out hours ago, and I just realized there was a glitch and it was only sent out 5 minutes ago. So I was scrambling to text everybody. So I'm so glad y'all saw my text or my email and could make it. So it's probably just going to be us, but that's okay. So my name is Courtney, and I have passed the ESL core subjects, a bunch of other tests, and I tutor and offer study material for it. And you can see the ESL test. I took it a long time ago in 2009, but the test hasn't changed since then, right? And I did really well. I got a 293. And then I thought, well, I could make a study guide to help other people pass, right? So, what makes me different, like I know there's lots of options out there for study material, but what makes me different is I really make my courses concise. So they have what you need to know, but they don't have a lot of extra stuff. Some of the programs out there that I've bought or that I've checked out, they have so much information, it's hard to get through and you can't really retain it all. So I really cut it down to just what you need to know, nothing extra. So tonight we will go over at least one competency and then some sample questions. And my course does have self-checking quiz where it gives you instant feedback, but it's all mixed up by competency. So tonight we're going to use a Word document for the quiz questions. That way they're broken down by competency. But in the course, it's going to be real easy if you enroll in the course to check your answers. It'll tell you right away if you got it right or wrong. So I thought we would do competency one. We'll keep it real simple and short because I know everybody's probably ready for dinner. Um, and competency one is on language concepts, right? So the ESL teacher knows fundamental language concepts and understands the structure and conventions of the English language. So you have to know a bunch of terms that you might be familiar with when you took the core subjects. Have you guys already taken the core subjects test?
I've I've taken the SPED K through 12.
Great, good deal. That's good. So you might have learned some of that depending on which sped you took. If you took the regular one that has ELAR, or if you took the supplemental one, you would not have had that. But these words come up on the English language arts section of the core subjects and also of the sped test, the full sped test, not the supplemental. Um, but let's talk about them because even if you passed your content test already, your core subjects are sped. If you're like me, some of these words you get kind of rusty, right? So I break it down in real plain language. I'm not a professor. I don't have a PhD. I have a master's degree. I've passed all these tests, but I keep the language real simple so we don't get confused, right? So morphology is the study of morphemes. So what's a morpheme? It's the smallest linguistic unit with meaning. So like base words, prefixes, suffixes. So like the word dishonestly. Well, that has three morphemes. Honest is the base word, dis is the prefix, and li is the suffix, right? So morphemes are the smallest unit that have meaning, right? So like the word hands has two morphemes. Hand is the root word, base word, and then the S makes it plural, changes the meaning, right? Syntax is the structure of sentence or phrases, right? And you want to discuss this in both L1 and L2. Now, we know as an ESL teacher, it's not your job to know another language, right? But if you want to do things like bridging and be real effective, you want to learn a little bit about your students' home languages so you can help them make these connections, right? Talk about similarities and differences. Now, most of your students, their L1 will be Spanish, right? So you might already be familiar with the syntax and know how it's similar and different. Like adjectives and nouns are different in English and Spanish, right? In English, we put the adjective first and then the noun. In Spanish, they usually put the noun first and then the adjective. So that's something you can point out with direct, explicit instruction. Lexis is the total vocabulary set of a language, right? Semantics, you've probably heard this word. It's the difference in meaning, right? So might have the same dictionary definition, but a different connotation, right? So words like love, adore, like, Or words like skinny, thin, lanky, right? They all sound different. Some of them sound nicer than others. So we want to teach students how to use these words appropriately according to the situation, which brings us to pragmatics. Pragmatics is using language appropriately according to the situation. So the way you talk to your boss is different than the way you talk to your child, right? Because it's a different situation and a different person. Phonology is production of the basic sound units of phonemes, about how the sounds are similar and different in L1 and L2. You want to draw their attention to that. So for example, the R in Spanish is very different than the R in English, right? So we can give them direct instruction on that and give them what's called articulatory feedback, where they can see how our mouth moves and what we do with our tongue. Even we can try to show them that to make these sounds. Phonemes are the most basic units of sound. Graphemics is a study of systems of writing. Graphemes are letters that spell a sound, right? Segmentation, you probably learned about this already, is breaking words up into syllables or into individual phonemes, right? You can also do it for onset and rhyme, if you remember onset and rhyme. So at the end of every little section, I have a little check your understanding, see if you remember what you learned. We also need to know the functions and uses of registers of language, social versus academic in English, and use this knowledge to plan and modify instructional material. So there's a difference between BICS and CALP, right? BICS is basic interpersonal communicative skills, which is the conversational skills you need just to talk everyday language, right? So some of your students that are new to the US, or maybe they've lived here their whole life, but they spoke a different language at home, when they're immersed in a culture and a language, they might learn it and have BICS within a year. So they have conversational skills, communicative skills, but they don't yet have cognitive academic language proficiency. This is the language they need to succeed in the classroom, the more academic formal language with jargon, right? This can take 4 to 7 years to develop. And when you're teaching them this, you need to provide scaffolding. That's additional language support, right? So that's BICS and CALP. All right, so we finished competency 1 super quick. So we probably have time for at least one more competency, but let's check our understanding. So if you could put your answer in the chat box. Now in my course, if you have my course or if you enroll in it, I'll show you how this works. Well, let me just open up. I think I have. Well, we'll just click off of it and we'll go to the final exam. Oh, good. This is by competency. I forgot I do have it separated by competency here. So we can, even better, we can do it like this. So if you guys will read this and then put your answer in the chat box, I'll select it and we'll see if we get these right. Good. Yes. We didn't directly talk about that, but what I like about my course is the things that you don't necessarily learn from the course, you're going to learn from the questions, right? So some of it you're going to learn from the rationales. It's okay if we miss questions. You pick the second best answer, and that happens a lot, right? So conversational phrases, scaffolding. Scaffolding is kind of a word that's usually the right answer, right? But there's a similar question in the Texas NES INC manual that states that the best way to help them acquire English is to have authentic, meaningful conversations with native speakers. That's the best way. So it's okay if we miss some of these, we're still practicing. And I do want to show you, I think instead of doing another competency, I'll show you guys something else instead. Because I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. We go to the free preparation manual, which is where you go to register for your test, right? You can learn a lot, and this is totally free. You can learn a lot by taking these sample questions and then read all the rationales. and you'll learn a lot, right? And when I took the ESL, some of the same questions were on my test. I can't promise you that will happen to you, but some of the questions were on my test. So, and it's free and it's there for your benefit. And there's 40 questions, so that's pretty good. 40 free practice questions. Some of the exams don't have that many questions to practice, so that's really good. But it's really helpful if you have a course to teach you all the content instead of relying on just a handful of questions, right? Well, it's not a handful, but it's not, it's not going to teach you everything that my course would teach you, right? So it's good to have a course to really learn the material. So we got that one. Now let's do the next one. Let me make this full screen so you can see it better.
Mama, where's my water bottle that has my name on?
So this one can be tricky. We'll pick A, but let's look at it. The correct answer is D. So, and in another question in the manual and in my course, you learn from these practice questions that is super important to pre-teach vocabulary before you teach a lesson, especially for English language learners, right? That's especially important in content areas where they're going to come across words that they don't know, right? So the reason A is not as strong of an answer is because we want to be doing more than allowing time. It's true that we need to teach grade level content. We don't water things down or do lower grade level teaks, but we want to give them support and scaffolding instead of just extra time, right? So we talked about this briefly, but we talked about a lot of these words, so it might not have sunk in yet. This one is, so they're not communicating appropriately according to the situation, right? And so yes, pragmatics is knowing how to use language appropriately according to the situation. Well, hopefully this is going to process. If not, I've got the questions pulled up on a Word document. Usually my course is really fast, so I don't know what's going on here. Maybe they're doing an update. Let me try one more time because I like it better like this. But if it doesn't work, they might be doing an update. It's loading, or it might be my internet. Well, let's do it this way. Hopefully you guys can see this. This is a little bit smaller. So number 4, I'll read it because it might be kind of small. A kindergarten ESL teacher is teaching students to clap the syllables. She is teaching them phonics, graphophonemic awareness, segmentation, semantics. So A is phonics, B is graphophonemic awareness, C is segmentation, D is semantics. Good. Segmentation is when you're breaking words into syllables or into onset and rhyme or into individual phonemes, right? So there's lots of ways to segment. Next, we have graphemes. Graphemes are A, the same as phonemes, B, the smallest unit of language that has meaning, C, the letters that spell a sound in a word? Or D, spoken sounds? Yeah, they're the letters that spell. So it's the written form of a letter, right? And then number 6, let me space this out so it's a little bit easier to see. Which of the following is most helpful to assess students' reading comprehension and ability to use vocabulary words appropriately? So this is something we didn't talk about yet, but let's see if you guys know this offhand, and if not, you'll learn it from the question, right? So their reading comprehension and ability to use vocabulary words appropriately. Closed activities, KWL, multiple choice test, or a class discussion. So I'll give you a second to think about that. And you might not know what closed activities are depending on your background. So for reading comprehension, a KWL chart is often really good, but combining it with using vocabulary words appropriately, closed activities are great. And closed activities are when you let me show you. Kind of like the Mad Lib activities, if you've ever done that, but you can get closed activities for free. You can make them too, where there's a missing word and they have to choose the word, right? So this helps them understand what word makes sense in there, right? And also knowing word types. Is it a noun, an adjective? So it helps them with reading comprehension, and it also helps with vocabulary words. So closed activities are very helpful when they're learning syntax and even for practicing some reading comprehension and using vocabulary words appropriately. Good, we still have a few more questions to go. Number 7, a 5th grade teacher gives students the words thin, skinny, frail, slim, and slender, and asks them the difference in meaning. What is the teacher showing students? A, pragmatics, B, semantics, C, morphemes, D, syntax. This one is semantics, right? Whenever we're talking about, like, for example, a little bit more of a blunt one would be the difference between like chubby, overweight, and fat, right? They all have very different feelings associated with them, right? And it's kind of the same thing for skinny, frail, slim, and slender, right? If you call somebody skinny, that's kind of not as polite as thin or slender, right? Frail implies that they're weak. So that's the semantics, the connotation of the word. So that one's connotation, semantics. Number 8, a 6th grade teacher has a student that has been in the USA for 1 year and can already communicate in conversations effectively. The student has mastered A, cognitive academic language proficiency, B, morphology, C, graphophonemic awareness, or D, basic interpersonal communicative skills. Good, basic interpersonal communicative skills, just having a conversation, right? So when you overgeneralize something, that's when you learn a rule and you apply it all the time. So maybe a student learns that in English, to make a word plural, you add an S. So they might say something like foots instead of feet, right? They're overgeneralizing, right? And it makes them make mistakes. It usually works out for them, but whenever the rule doesn't apply, it's called overgeneralizing. A 3rd grade student overgeneralizes past tense and often says swimmed and goed. What is the best strategy the teacher can use to help him correct this? A, the teacher can continually offer indirect correction and model proper usage by restating the phrases the student says incorrectly. B, the teacher can give the student worksheets on irregular past tense verbs and have him regularly practice using the irregular verbs in class and at home. C, the teacher can simply allow the student more time to work on his basic interpersonal communicative skills. D, the teacher can pair the student with a native speaking peer and have them practice irregular verb endings together until the student masters past tense verbs. So this one might be tricky. Let's see. It's tempting to pick D because speaking with a native speaking peer is always a good thing, right? But the best way to do it whenever they're making mistakes like this is to always indirectly correct. So like my daughter used to say some of these things, swim and goat and stuff like that. So if they say, yesterday I swam, you say, oh, yesterday you swam. That's great that you swam yesterday. And you emphasize it. So you're not saying, hey, you're wrong, but they pick up on it indirectly from, your modeling. So that's the best way. A second grade student is struggling with speech in both his home language and in English. Why is it so important to get early intervention? A, because speech problems are highly related to other learning difficulties, and the student may need speech therapy as well as other special education services. B, because speaking, listening, reading, and writing are all interrelated, and speech problems can affect his reading and writing skills. C, because speech services are only offered through the 3rd grade, so services need to be started immediately. D, because speech problems universally indicate a hearing or sight problem that should be addressed immediately. Good. That's right. We know that speaking, listening, reading, writing are all connected, and I saw this with my daughter. She struggled with speech, with final consonant deletion, and with substituting sounds. And then when she started writing, she was writing the same way she used to speak, right? So we had to do some work on that to correct that. It's all worked itself out with lots of therapy and practice. But that concludes competency 1. So there's lots of competencies, so we only touched on a fraction of the ESL, right? But I definitely encourage you guys to take advantage of that free manual, and I'll show you real quick like how many competencies there are so you can see what I'm talking about. There's 3 domains, but then there's lots of competencies. So we did 1, but there are 10 competencies, right? And I forgot to tell you guys a little bit about the test too, that you might not know yet. You get 5 hours. I don't think you'll need 5 hours. There's only 80 selected response questions, the multiple choice questions. So I don't think you will need 5 hours for 80 questions, but you have it, right? And the scores come out quickly. It's not like the STR that takes a while to be graded because this is only multiple choice. So the scores come out on Tuesdays and Fridays. So you get it within a few days. So that's a little bit about the test. And then, if you don't have a good study guide yet, or maybe you have one, but you don't really like it, right? Maybe it's overwhelming. Or I've also seen some that they don't have material that's similar to the competencies, right? Like, for example, I recently took the special ed test last year, and I bought a guide by Mometrics, and it had really good information, but I noticed it wasn't aligned to the competencies. And I was like, well, it's all good special ed information, not wrong, but it's not going to help me pass if it's not aligned to the competencies that the state put together, right? So that's what I do. I make sure everything's aligned to the competency. So I'm going to put the link in the chat for my course, and there's also a separate practice test. Now the course does have a full-length practice test. So the separate one is just if you want extra practice, or if maybe you already have a guide that you like and you just want an extra practice test, you could buy that, only. So, and it's affordable. There's a payment plan if you select Affirm or Afterpay at checkout. Then you can break it up into monthly payments.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Oh, sure. So my course is $69. You get it for 3 months, which is plenty of time for most people for the ESL test, right? And if you select Affirm or Afterpay, I'll show you. So like we click on it right here. And then I'm going to click on $69 one-time payment, right? So you pay once and you get it for 3 months. Oh, I'm already enrolled, so it's going to take me to my dashboard. Let me do it in a different browser where it won't remember me. So you go to the link that I put in the chat box, right? Click on the course. You don't want to buy only the test if you don't already have a good course, because the test alone is probably not going to help you pass, right? But if you already have a good course that you like and you just want extra practice, you could do that. But so I recommend you do my course if you can, right? So you click on the $69 one-time payment, and then it's going to take you to the checkout, right? And down here, there's different options. It'll say bank, right? So you can pay using your bank. You can use Cash App. If you click on Afterpay, notice it'll bring it down to 4 interest-free payments of $17.25, right? Interest-free, that's great. If you select Affirm, you can get 4 interest-free payments. And then I think there's one more. Let me see. Klarna. Let's look at Klarna. Nope, Klarna doesn't. Some of them have it and some of them don't. But you get Affirm or Afterpay to bring it down to 4 interest-free payments. So that makes it accessible, or you get $5 back if you use your bank. Or you can pay with a card. You can also use PayPal. So lots of payment options to make it budget friendly. And I think you'll really like it. And if you buy the course, you can actually get the extra tests a little bit cheaper. So that's good if you know you're going to want extra practice. But any questions or comments? No? Well, I'm so glad it worked out where you guys could make it, because I was having a little bit of a panic attack when I realized that nobody got the Zoom link until 5 minutes before we met, and yet you still made it. So thank you for coming. I wish you the best of luck. If you need help, or maybe you want to ask me questions and you don't want to ask in front of everybody here, I know it's a small group, but still, that's my phone number. You can call or text me, and we can chat about your Oh, you're welcome, Melissa. I thank each and every one of you. I love what I do. And I think you'll find that, like I said, my courses are simple, easy to understand, and save you time because it doesn't have extra stuff, but it has what you need. So it might not be the fastest course, right? I've seen some people that have shorter courses, but I don't think they have enough. So mine is like just what you need, nothing extra. But I think you'll like it. And then, yeah, please reach out if you have any other questions. And thank you so much for coming. Have a great night.
Thank you, you too.